Meanwhile, if you're a Trump supporter who happened to be at the Capitol on January 6th, you face exorbitant bail, solitary confinement, abuse of jail guards, and no due process.
That was Marjorie Greene speaking out in defense of what she considers to be political prisoners, those who rioted on January 6th and were locked up. She sometimes calls them prisoners of war. Well, they're the only ones that did the attacking, so I feel like you're making a case against them in that label.
And they still lost.
And still lost, of course. It's good to win a war. But anyway, she was pointing out that they haven't been treated well. Abusive guards, solitary confinement. I don't know how true that is of these individual prisoners, but it is definitely the case that this is significant. And I've felt for the last 2 years that she's been talking about this, that hey, maybe we can come together and have some actual bipartisanship and fight back against these abuses. Now, I am very much obviously wasting my time because she doesn't actually care about those things affecting people who didn't riot on January 6th. But in principle, she's on our side. Maybe we can push her. In any event, we have an opportunity. We're gonna jump ahead to graphic 3 because in Nevada, lawmakers are reconsidering limits on how state prisons use solitary confinement there. They had previously tried a couple of years ago to do this. This is pretty significant though. This sort of rollback of solitary confinement for the the best interests of prisoners. The bill defines segregation or solitary confinement as more than 22 consecutive hours in a cell, would limit the use to 15 consecutive days, after which you have to have a mental health clinician and others conduct a review to determine where to place the inmate rather than just leaving them there forever. They would also be restricted from placing a person in solitary confinement who is 90 days or less from their release. What they found, by the way, in I guess the research for this is that about 10% of Nevada's prison population is in solitary confinement at any given time. That is much higher than I think most people would expect. 57 people had been in restrictive housing for more than a decade at that point. And it's not evenly distributed. 40% of trans prisoners are in solitary confinement. In some cases, perhaps for their protection, which is its own issue of abuse and all of that. But those who are advocating for the rights of prisoners are saying that this is a very significant potential step. It's not the only solution that you could have, and it hasn't yet been passed. But Brett, it is good to see at least this sort of discussion. Generally, anything that you try to do that would protect the interests of prisoners is immediately attacked as being like soft on crime or something.
So a major trend in any kind of justice reform is people kind of jumping on bandwagons and not really understanding the fundamental issues or the fundamental solutions that are advocated that are actually in line with your ideology. And rather people just kind of, you get politicians that kind of jump on as the leader of the bandwagon, and then they just want to score political points, so they'll get like they'll get a law that can be considered a win passed, but it won't actually fix anything. And I'm pretty sure that's what Marjorie Taylor Greene's trying to do. She doesn't want to delve into the specifics of what solitary confinement does to any kind of prisoner when they're placed in solitary confinement. She doesn't want to delve into the specifics of trans individuals being victims of battery in prisons at a disproportionate clip when compared to non-trans individuals. And she doesn't want to get into that. But that doesn't mean you can't harness the instinct behind it to get the actual positive change made. So there's all these things that happen in Congress all the time. You'll see AOC and Matt Gaetz get together with Ro Khanna and talk about getting rid of corporate money in politics. That's fine. If you can harness the instinct to get a law passed that materially improves conditions in a way in line with actual tangible improvement of a system, then great. But yeah, that's the hardest thing to do, because you have to very deftly convince Marjorie Taylor Greene you're on her side, but at the last second, like, make the legalese so complex that she doesn't understand you just protected people from atrocities within prison system.
Yeah, and you'd have to do that because she wouldn't be willing to make this change that would benefit the January 6th prisoners if it meant that it would also benefit other prisoners.
Right.
Like, she would rather that they remain in solitary so long as other people remain in solitary. Yeah. And even if you're a conservative, you know that that's true.
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.